Welcome to Down the Garden Path. I'm your host, Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and plant lover. I enjoy discussing down to earth tips and advice to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. And I also aim to bring you interesting and relevant topics to educate you all about the landscaping and horticultural industry. July can be a busy time in the garden. I know you will find some helpful tips from this past episode where Matthew and I discuss all the to-dos and sometimes not to-dos in your July garden. So have a listen and please email me if you have any other questions about an issue you might be having in your July garden.
July in the garden. It is going to be hot, and it's been hot the last few days too. I know I've been watering. Thank goodness here in the GTA, we had some rain today, and I think we're going to get a lot of good rain tomorrow. So
Mhm,
rain is a good thing. Rain is a good thing. We just don't want it to
mhm.
come too hard and too fast.
That's right, that's right, and I've been without air conditioning since Saturday night, so I definitely as I'm reading that, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's definitely been hot." That has been repaired, and, the house is cooling as we speak, so yes. Um, and the weather has I mean, we've really gotten some deluges today, but I think that makes the plants very happy.
Yes, that is right. That is right. Like we said with the deluge, we do want it to be just like a good steady rain. It can be heavy, there can be lots of water. When it comes down and it just floods and it runs off, especially when it's just those brief rains, like
Mhm.
15 minutes and it just pours and it goes. All of that's not going to have the chance to absorb into the garden and wash away. So double check that things actually did get watered. If we had a drought and we had that flash rain, that's not going to be enough this summer or this July for that water to get in there. The ground is so dry, it's going to repel the water to start and then very slowly start to take it in. And that's why we get one of those nice, long, good rains that
Mhm.
really get in there to soak.
Yeah.
So a good long day of a nice slow trickle or some good steady rain, that's a good watering day for sure.
That's right.
For sure.
Especially, I would say, check your containers because I think
Yes.
that sometimes the ones in the garden get a little bit more, but when it comes down that fast, I don't know that it always does a good job of watering, the annuals in containers or vegetables in containers, that type of thing, right?
And you're right there too, because the soil in our ground is going to be different than the soil in our containers,
Mhm.
right? We've got that peat-based container, and peat, when it dries out in a drought, especially, will become hydrophobic. So when you water that watering can or pour in that water, if the soil is contracted from the edge of the pot and it's literally running down the sides, you're like, oh, it's coming out. Great, I'm watering. But is it really actually watering? You're just kind of watering over and around the soil. So if you do check your containers and you do find that really hard crust on the top, just break it in. Like if you're just kind of grabbing or teasing your hair with your fingers, just break that soil open a little bit so that it can pass through some non-hydrophobic soil underneath, and then just give it a few good lifts of water. Give it a
Mhm.
water, let it soak. Come back 5 or 10 minutes. Give it a water, let it soak, and she'll eventually rehydrate and everybody will be happy again. So
Yeah.
yeah, excellent point. Yeah, ground is going to be different than our peat-based containers for sure.
Mhm.
For sure. Lawns.
Lawns.
Oh, should we start there now?
Yeah, that definitely. I'm sure there's a question or two coming for the lawns.
Yes.
But
But
yeah.
rain and that watering, that's one of our key things when we get into that water for the summer, right? Remember, all of our grasses, especially here in the GTA, are cooler season grasses. So if you find that your lawn is going dormant during the summer, it may be that you're cutting it too short, but it also may just be going dormant because you are relying on that rain to water it. So we do, if you want to keep that lawn green, you can. Well, remember, once that humidex enters that forecast, we're going to raise our mowers to cut 3 inches high. We're going to water once a week, thoroughly to once a week, or thoroughly once a week to 1 inch deep. So test out your lawn or your sprinkler. See how long it takes for your sprinkler or your sprinkler system to put down 1 inch. And I
Mhm.
would just go out halfway between, for example, if you have an irrigation emitter or you have a favorite spot where you always put your sprinkler, watch how far it arches. What's the furthest point from the sprinkler to the farthest point that it'll reach? And in the middle, put a container and like a measuring cup, for example, maybe one you use for
Okay.
outside or a can, and start it at like 3 o'clock or whenever you want to water, but you want to
Yeah.
watch how long it takes for that can to gather an inch of water in that spot. And
Okay.
that's how long you need to irrigate so that that whole area evenly gets that 1 inch of water everywhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
And
your,
it's key that it's just once a week. Like, so we're not, so I
yes.
think sometimes people think, well, I'll just put it on for a half an hour every night or every other night type of thing and just, give everything a little top up. But that's not the best because you really want the water to seep down because it's all about the roots, right?
Hmm.
What's the song? It's all about the bass, but it's really all
Yeah.
about the roots. So that by doing it once a week and doing what we would call that inch is like a deep watering less frequently, so it's deeper. Then those roots they go, and everybody can't see my gestures, right, man?
Yeah.
That's like watching me. Um, so then the roots go down much deeper to get the water, and that helps them get through the drought times.
Yeah, exactly. When you raise your mower higher, it's creating a shade, it's protecting the soil from sun and wind, so the water lasts longer. We've got it down to an inch. And then as that over that week, that inch dries out and the roots detect that, r- drought actually stimulates the root tips to grow and hunt for water. So you're encouraging better, like you were saying, Joanne, better root growth to chase that water in between. So yeah, exact great point. If again, if the roots know that you're only watering once every, 10 minutes every other day or 10 minutes, by hand because you come home and it's something you do to relax, roots are smart. They know that the water is up here. They're going to stay
Yeah.
to that half inch. And then the second you mow it and it gets hot or it just gets hot, you're going to burn it out.
Yeah.
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 And she's going to go to
And
sleep.
really that does also apply to our trees and shrubs as well. So we can definitely talk about that. But watering is very important for July and August, isn't it?
Definitely our hottest, most drought
Hmm.
filled months. And we are going to have a hot one. Or so they say. We're going to have
Hmm.
a very, very hot summer coming up.
Hmm. And now that we're still on lawns, let's stay there and talk about fertilizer. So is it a good idea, even in this heat, and let's say a week like this where we're going to get quite a bit of rain, is it a good idea to do put fertilizer down, or should we wait?
Yeah, if it's green already and we know that we've got moisture there, we can fertilize,
Oh,
especially
okay.
with the synthetic fertilizer. So, like our Scots or our CIL, the mineral based one, the non organic one, the synthetic ones. We can water as long as it's actively growing. If we know though that we've had drought stress or it's not quite green or it's starting to stress or you're cutting it short and not watering it enough, that stress that it's under when we do water with, fertilize with a synthetic, it can be such a large burst of food right away that the lawns can get a little bit stressed and they can actually bump themselves into dormancy. So if you do have a stress lawn, it's mid to end of July when we're going to start fertilizing, and you do put down that synthetic fertilizer, it might knock her into dormancy. On the other hand, if you do need to put some food down and you are watering regularly, or you've got it stressed, but you know that some food would help, go organic. It's going to feed the soil. So it's not going to green up within the first 2 weeks right away, like a synthetic one, like a CIL or Scots or your other favorite house brand that's synthetic. It's going to take a couple of weeks to break down with the soil. The microorganisms are going to eat the food and then release the nutrients to the grass and then improve the soil structure, and the grass will green from weeks through 2 through like weeks 8. So it's going to go like you're going to get a not a right away green, but a longer, more sustained green because you're feeding the soil. Like again, like feeding our keeping healthy organs on the outside, we're
Hmm.
just as good, or we're
Hmm.
even better. Yeah, so that'll also reduce the stress. The organic won't knock it into a stress-based dormancy because the
Okay.
soil's acting on it and giving it a nice, slow, controlled feeding. sustained feeding. So yeah. So watch July and especially August if you should be fertilizing in July, not so much in August. But yeah, watch your lawn state in July. If it's overstressed, don't just go down and buy a bag of fertilizer and feed it and water it once or soak it in, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
As you say though too, as we say that if it's green we can fertilize. Right now in the GTA we're getting rain. We don't want to go out and fertilize with the synthetic fertilizers while the grass blades are wet. We want to make sure the grass itself physically dries off because those
Oh,
prills
that's
can
important.
land,
Yeah.
yeah, can get on the blades and then they'll start to dissolve or release their nutrients as they slowly drip down the blade, and you can get speckling or some dead spots on the grass
Mhm.
blades itself as the little feed moves to the soil. So yeah, so make sure the grass is nice and dry, the soil is moist. We can fertilize so it doesn't stick to the grass blades. And if it's too stressed but you need to feed, go organic for sure. For
Okay.
sure.
That's good. And another thing with our lawns and the amount of rain we are supposed to get this week, is the weeds will definitely be growing. So that's something
Hmm.
to kind of stay on top of, before they get ahead of you. If you have a lot of crabgrass in your lawn or some of the other, um, more prolific weeds, then they are going to grow. Probably they always seem to grow twice as fast as the grass, right? So that's something to just keep on be mindful of and keep on top of, especially before you go and cut it, because I feel like then it's harder to find it, right? So before you cut your lawn, do a good, walk around and try to dig out as many of the weeds, especially the ones before they go to seed, right? Because then you're just spreading, um next year's or next month's weeds with the seed.
Yeah. You start mowing those seeds and spreading them all over. Same thing with crabgrass, right? Crabgrass is going to bloom closer to the fall and it's an annual. So if you can pick those now and try to prevent as many from going to seed, or even as they start to go to seed again, going and picking them or just mowing them really down with your trimmer,
Right,
or grinding them, mom's going to die. The mother plant's going to die and she won't set seed, and then those seeds won't show up next year. So
right.
yeah, get in and get those weeds. Yeah, excellent, excellent point. And remember too, as long as we're feeding our grass, keeping it long, and promoting those cooler conditions throughout the year, the grass will eventually fight its own battle and stay nice and green and thick,
Hmm.
all by regular feeding, cutting high, and watering 1 inch deep once a week. She'll be
Okay,
good.
good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So annuals and perennials.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know, but it's probably time. There's probably some perennials in your garden that have, finished blooming. Like, well, I think of like peonies
Yeah.
probably have finished blooming. So you know that you can, I mean, that you don't have to cut it back. The foliage on a peony, I just think is beautiful. It's glossy
Hmm.
and really nicely shaped, but you can deadhead the unsightly, like dead ends of, sad looking peonies. So you can do a little bit of deadheading there. Some of your other ones, like I think of salvia, right, that have stopped blooming, the little spikes that may have stopped blooming, catmint that may have, slowed down. You can now do some what we would call deadheading, right? And cutting back of those perennials, and they will actually start, to create more flowers, right? Generate more flowers.
Yeah, that's right. Without focusing on those seeds, a lot of those species will give you or reward you with a nice little flush. Other things, like for example, last week I was deadheading some phlox. Some of the creeping
The
phlox was
creeping
just,
phlox. Oh, okay.
yeah, just kind of out of bloom. Just there's a nice mature clump held on a little longer where it was because it was a little cooler. So I had to go in and just shear it back. And this week she'll reward me with a flush of new growth and getting nice and dense. She's not going to rebloom, but she'll pop back and look
Hmm.
nice and flush. So yeah, great time to do some deadheading. If you don't know what deadheading is, remember it's just you're finding the old spent flower. You're going to follow the stem back to the next set of true leaves. Sometimes you'll see new flowers already coming out, so you can just
Hmm.
cut right above where those leaves are coming out, called the node, and regenerate or feed that new energy into those new flowers. I think of a salvia there with,
Yeah.
when you go down, right, you get the little flowers on the next two nodes where the next sets of blooms are going to come out. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, definitely cleaning up any deadheading, any dead leaves,
Hmm.
spent flowers, keep it things looking fresh. Remember, we want to do this too because especially with rain or the humid weather, these spots can be vectors of disease. So we can bring in molds and mildews and insects as things start to rot and decay. These things start to take advantage of that free moisture and that dead material to start eating and taking over. So, yeah, and it just keeps things happy and vigorous and
That's right.
producing
That's right.
fresh
Things looking
foliage
good
and
and
flowers.
yeah. And your annual. So I think you can, especially if you did buy some of the like hanging baskets or some of the, big containers early, like I think of those early Mother's Day ones, chances are they're fairly root bound and they might be looking a little bit on the sadder side or starting to get a little overgrown. You can give them a little bit of a haircut and do some deadheading and do some trimming. Make sure we talked about making sure they have enough water with this rain, but we also want to make sure they don't have too much water. So have a
Right.
look and see because they could, if it smells kind of sour, then it might be too much water depending on where it is. And you can kind of, especially if they don't have
Drainage
oh,
holes.
drainage holes. That's the word, drainage holes. I'm like,
I could see the motion.
you see the motion of drainage holes. I didn't know that drainage holes had a motion, but it did. That Matt can, see. But yes, so some of the bigger, the 16-inch pots don't really have drainage holes, do they?
Yeah, a lot of them, or they have very few ones that are small and spread
Right.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So yeah. So and if there is a plant that's not doing well and everything else is doing great, then take out that plant that's not doing well and tuck something else in there. And we know, annuals, I mean, everything in the garden costs money, but you don't have to throw the whole thing out or deal with a plant that you're not happy with. You can and some of the garden centers, like especially the ones like the shopping center ones that are winding down, not the grocery store ones that are winding down, you can go and grab some, some annuals from them at a good deal and kind of tuck them in. So definitely know that they need some love in this coming month of July and even some fertilizer.
yeah, that's right. I have to do that exact same thing. I had a New Guinean patient in the center of a planter. It kind of died. It just had some
Hmm.
stress from that really hot couple of weeks we had ago. And then this week again, she just got a little bit of that heat and she finally collapsed. She couldn't come back for a fourth time. So yeah, I just gonna go pop out. Even your big box stores too. They usually will carry some 1 gallon sizes of some of the annuals or some of the key annuals,
Hmm.
impatiens, geraniums, things like that, uh, grasses or the spikes from the center that they know we're going to lose. So you can just, like you said, I'm going to have to cut that little New Guinea out, pop a new one in,
Hmm.
and she'll root and grow. And then another good point, fertilizer, right? We do need these plants are growing so fast, they're drinking so much. We do want to make sure that they are fed. So you're going to feed something with a high middle number and a high last number, that phosphorus and the potassium, and just make sure that they keep blooming and focus on producing new blooms,
Hmm.
generating new blooms
New blooms.
for sure.
Would it at 2020 be fine? Like most people will have like a 2020, right?
2020 is
Okay.
perfectly fine unless you have something that's like sensitive to high nitrogen or there's so much nitrogen in our, which is the first number, the first 20.
Hmm.
If there's an overabundance of nitrogen, we might see that the plants stimulate more foliage growth, but overall that's
Okay.
perfectly fine. Yeah, they usually just
Okay.
take what they need, and yeah.
Yeah, go from there.
That's right. So yes, you can also, so you can do that by granular or you can do it by water, so water soluble. So something that's like the Miracle Grow blue crystals, dissolve it by water and give it a food feed. As we're talking about drought and fertilizing, remember always water your plants first. You don't want to water with fertilizer or heavy fertilizer to burn the roots. You want to make sure there's water first, let it soak in or rehydrate. If you have to water the next day, that's fine, we don't want those salts coming into direct contact with those roots to damage them or slow them down, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So definitely get them feeding, keep them nice and lush. Lush, nice and lush. So yeah, annuals and perennials. Again, like you had said, we were looking at some of the annuals, deadheading and cleaning them up. Some of the perennials might be doing or needing some of the same thing. I said, like the phlox, a lot of our spring flowering
Hmm.
perennials, like your peony. Same thing with our shrubs, remember our pruning of our shrubs. We wanted, in general, we're going to prune or after they've flowered. Don't want to cut off any of the flowers for the coming season. So once your shrub has gone off into big full flower, I think of, for example, our Wigelias, our late spring, early summer bloomers, they're out right now. As we get through July, we're going to see a lot of them lose some of that flower power. And as we get into mid to end of July, we can go in and we can give a nice shaping to it. So we can cut back by a third if we really needed to. I know I've got one or two Wigelias that I need to work on
Hmm.
because they're just kind of exploding in all direction. There's no real structure to them. But I'm going to go in and do a little bit of a heavier pruning, some scaffold branching set up there, and just give them a light shear. And something like Wigelia or your nine barks, they're going to be able to take that and reward you with new stems, new structure. In the case of the nine bark, for example, or like your Wigelias, they love to little bubble up little flowers all season long, and more so,
Okay.
some more so than the other, depending on the cultivar.
Hmm.
But yeah, they're going to reward you with blooms all year long. So wait for your things that are in your garden now, especially your shrubs, to finish blooming before you give them a good heavy shear for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
Great. Excellent.
Trees and shrubs.
Hmm.
We talked about some pruning. We can fertilizing. We're gonna be at the end of our fertilizer, especially like our evergreen fertilizer, our trees fertilizer, as we get into July. And again, this is gonna be dependent where you are. Where we are here, we're gonna stop about Canada Day or July 4th, which is the same, pretty much that same week, right?
Okay. I
Um,
thought we could fertilize through July, but no, we want to stop.
we can in the way that for us especially, we're starting to see longer falls. So
Yes, that's the other thing.
right,
I was just gonna say, I mean,
yeah,
because we're not getting a hard frost until later, and we're not getting snow until later. So I thought we
yes, and
might be able to push it a bit.
yeah, and no, and you're right. We are able to start pushing it and seeing it a little later. The overall general rule is around July 1st. If you just fed this week and you were going to do one more, you're usually pretty fine. But the idea is there at the beginning of July, we want to slow our fertilizer with a heavy nitrogen or with a high nitrogen because we don't want to stimulate all that new, like you were saying, that soft tree growth or new leaves. That as we get a frost or a hard cold night, that new growth is so tender that it burns. We want
Hmm.
it to harden off as it cools down so that it lets go of the foliage. It'll let go either way, whether it's tender or not. But when that tender foliage gets burnt in a winter storm, our trees like, oh, that's what's going on. Now I need to repair myself. Do I lose this whole stem? Do I just drop leaves? What am I
Yeah.
doing? So yeah, so reducing the nitrogen if you need to. Again, if you've maybe planted new perennials or a new tree or a new shrub, we can definitely still feed with something with a higher middle number
Okay.
for the rest of the season. That's going to stimulate that new root growth, still provide that nitrogen and potassium for overall protection and resistance. And nitrogen is always needed in some degree for growth, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And water our trees. I mean, our city trees are, that's something that I feel like everybody thinks, oh, well, it rained, so my trees should be fine. But sometimes they do need a little bit of extra, right? If you, especially in like small boulevards, when you think about like their roots, they're surrounded by asphalt and concrete sidewalks and roads, and there's not a lot, even though they might have like a grassy patch around the base. There's not a lot of surface there, and all that water on all those hard surfaces, as we know, as Matt mentioned it earlier, it just runs off. So that's something to really important. There's, if you can have a soaker hose, you can have putting the sprinkler on close, around the drip line of the tree, which is, if you look up, look at where the branches come out to, how far the branches come, and kind of picture that circle. You can do a sprinkler in that area if it's a very mature tree. And again, just set a timer on your phone or something like that, and give it a good watering. um, and then there's also an option of a tree bag. That's something that I know I've used. My trees are all doing really well, especially compared to some neighbors' trees who were planted at the same time. Almost too well, actually, because mine are too big now and already shading my house. But yeah, I mean, the tree bag is nice, especially for those absent-minded, kind of lazy gardeners, kind of like me in some ways, right? You just fill the bag and it's tiny, tiny, tiny little holes, and it might take up to 8 hours for it to slowly release.
That's right.
Now, not as good, like that's definitely good for young trees, right, Matt? Because the trunk on bigger trees is so big that really the water, you don't need the water at the base of those trunks. You need them at the drip line. So really it depends on the age of your tree. But if you can barely zip it up around the tree, then that's a good sign. So yeah, so I'm sure some people recognize those, you see some municipalities use them when they plant a tree. They're just green bags. That are look like empty bags around the trees in our community, but you can buy them. Most garden centers will carry them, and I think they're really handy to have.
Yeah, exactly. They're great. I know we see a lot of them around Durham region here. Our municipalities are a big fan of them around those young trees. And as you said, as they get older, you may not be able to wrap them around, but you can be watering on the drip line. Trees are smart. They know that they're blocking most of their water. They're measuring that there's not much water content around the trunk in the soil. So they put their feeder roots way out beyond the edge of the tree. I'm always surprised, well, does this tree get a big roots? Like this, does this tree have big roots? Well, it's 30 feet wide and it knows that most of the water is beyond the edge of those leaves way over there. That's 15 feet away from its trunk. So yeah, you've got roots 20 feet over there. Or like you said, where it's tight in a boulevard, right? She may not be
Yeah.
able to really spread out that way. So her feeder roots are right in that boulevard. So yeah, making sure that you're irrigating well enough, you've got your bag on young trees, or you're using a root feeder that hooks up to your hose and injects
Mm,
water underneath the soil surface. Beyond the grass level, you go in about 6 to 8 inches down, and it pressurizes and blasts water out into the surrounding soil. You just go around your drip line, or as far as you can go. If you drip line, if you're out in the middle of your yard or that sort of thing, or if you're in the boulevard, just as many times as you can, every kind of 2 feet around the perimeter and around the middle.
mhm.
Get her a nice, good drink. But yeah, you're right. I think we always forget that our big trees, oh, it's so big, it's so established, it's been here for years. It's still thirsty and she's still drinking. And the number one way we really see this is you get to see like the burnt margins. I always think about the Norway maples, especially. You get to see like the edges of the margins of the leaves start to burn or brown
Mhm.
out a little bit,
Dry out,
especially in the
yeah.
top part. Yeah, the tree literally is moving so much or trying to move so much water with transpiring in this heat, and then it runs out of water that, the
Mhm.
tree still has the water being pulled away from the environment, and she just slowly dries out. Yeah, until
Mhm.
she gets some more. So if you
Yeah.
see that with your tree, that's a good sign that you need to be watering a little bit
Mhm.
more, maybe a
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah, and things like Japanese maples that need a little bit more moisture, you often
Hmm.
see that as well. And the other signs are it's kind of premature in the fall. You'll get some premature leaf drop, but then by then it's too late. Like adding water when you see the dry leaves, and adding water when you see the leaf drop, the premature leaf drop. That's almost too late, right? So the things we're kind of sharing with you. And by the way, all of this is in our book, Down the Garden Path. Shameless plug, a step-by-step guide to your Ontario garden, but you do not need to live in Ontario. But all of this, is in our July section, and everything from the lawn and the annuals and perennials and watering your trees. So yeah, so that's something to remember, that we're trying to be proactive, and if we do a little bit all the time, then it really is lower maintenance versus having to invest a lot of time or money into solving problems. So really, like with our book, we really wanted to just have everybody be proactive and stay on top of everything, and that really makes it low maintenance.
That's right. You know what I was thinking as you were saying, even though it says Ontario in the title, and there's so many tips, these still apply to your garden, whatever it is. Maybe we need to retitle the book, "A Proactive Step by Step Guide to your garden or landscape.
Maybe.
But like you said, proactive, right? Just like the show, July in the Garden. Not July quite yet, but these are things you definitely want to stay on your radar to keep things looking as green and as fresh as they are now, and as when you planted them.
That's
Thinking about
right.
other summer tips, what else do we need to do July in the garden?
Well, you know what? We haven't talked a lot about how our veggie gardens doing. We haven't talked a lot about veggies the last few months. My I think because
Hmm.
it's been cool, it's been a cooler start, which has been nice for the ornamental gardens and the grass and things like that. But I think it's gotten many vegetables off to a slower start. So yeah, so what should we be looking for in the vegetable garden, Matt?
Yeah, one of the biggest issues we find is our blossom end rot. And of course,
Mm,
it's going to be tomato specific, but who doesn't like a nice, juicy, flavorful tomato? Again, going back into watering, just making sure that you're feeding your tomatoes and they've got ample water. It's that movement of calcium. When they run out of calcium, you'll get the blossom end rot developing. And it's that weird rotting spot on the very bottom of your tomato where the flower used to attach. You usually get that one little point that's there. It'll affect those tomatoes, but it's not a disease that'll spread through all of those subsequent tomatoes. So
okay.
it'll just affect those ones where they miss the calcium, just making sure you've got some calcium and magnesium back in your soil, or it's included in your fertilizer. You can mm, keep your tomatoes growing fresh and strong. If you haven't planted anything, there are still lots of things. You could be planting
Mhm.
cabbages and onions, different peas, beans, radishes before mid July. If you haven't planted any potatoes, you could be putting in a whole group or a nice planting of potatoes just in time for a fall crop as well. Lots of different leafy greens, lettuces, cabbages, kales, all ready to go in still in the month of July with shorter lifespans or that are going to really bring on their own as things get cooler as well. So there's still lots of planting that we can definitely do as well.
Okay.
I hate to hit the watering hammer horse over the
Again,
head
yes,
with a
yeah.
hammer. But again, remember when you have juicy fruits, your cucumbers, your tomatoes, your apples, your berries,
Melons,
that's
yeah.
melons, especially melons. Yes. All of that is water that you are feeding it or that the rain is getting it. So if you have a crop that's not quite juicy or you thought it was going to be more flavorful, just make sure that you are feeding it and giving it that water so that it can do what it needs to be doing for sure.
Mhm.
For sure.
Okay. Just go back to the fertilizers because you mentioned the calcium for the tomatoes. So, if our listeners are concerned about their tomatoes, I just do the grape because that doesn't happen with like cherry tomatoes and grape tomatoes, right? It is the bigger tomatoes that get the blossom and rot.
It's more often on the bigger ones, and we also get to see them a lot. I have had them on a touch of my cherry tomatoes on some
Oh, okay.
cultivars,
Okay.
and that's more my fault because I've left my containers again a condo balcony garden kind of thing. I've
Yeah.
left sometimes my soil is really bad, but again it's like almost non-existent. If I have a
Okay.
truss of like 15, I can take off 4. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So what should we be fertilizing? So should it be like just a water soluble 20 20 20? Should it be something more organic? Like I know there's like the hen manure. It comes like in a like a I think of it as like a milk carton, more of a colorful
Yeah.
milk carton, right? And you can kind of sprinkle it and then water it into the soil. Is there a preferred one that you really feel like is because I feel like it's like a fast you need something that's really gonna act quickly.
Mm, yeah, you know what? There's a lot of I like again like the organic ones because you're always again building your soil. Still
Okay.
important to do in containers. But yeah, these guys feed so quickly that you can use something like a synthetic water soluble. It doesn't say organic. Remember, those are all minerals that we've had to mine and process so that they can become, food available or nutrients available for that. So it's not organic certified, but yeah, using something that's water soluble, specific for tomatoes, or if you have a slow release that is always feeding, just making sure that you're just watching and making sure that it's a nice balanced fertilizer with all the micro and macronutrients that the plant will need. I like to use, again, something from Fafard. We did try to have them on the show, and maybe they will be on a future podcast. But I like their garden special, and it's just a nice 6, 9, 12. I like to sprinkle a little bit in the bottom of the hole, plant my plant, and then sprinkle a little bit over it so that as the roots expand, they've got a nice slow release organic based fertilizer for them to eat. Lots of potassium, which increases the nutrient uptake efficiency. It's got a nice boost of a nice little phosphorus in there for flowers and vegging set because the flowers, right? They're the fruit. And then some nitrogen, which everybody needs. So it really comes down to personal preference. But I usually use that. And then if I really need to, I will put in some like a Miracle Grow or a water soluble, or even if you prefer to go organic, there are things
Mm-hmm.
like the musky fertilizer, which is a 511. There's a lot of,
Like a fish
uh,
one, right? Like a
yeah,
fish.
like a
Yeah.
fish-based one. There's a lot of kelp or seaweed-based ones, which have a
Mm-hmm.
nice nutrient profile as well. Remember, the organics have a lower amount of available percentage of those nutrients available to them because they need to be broken down by the organisms in the soil, which releases more nutrients based on the components in that fertilizer. So, yeah,
Okay.
so that's what I like to use, and that's what I've done in my containers for all of my veggies. And my stuff is growing well. I've got some peppers
Yeah.
and some tomatoes and some corn, and yeah, doing well.
Well, that's good. That
So,
is good.
so yes, so feed as you need to. It depends on what you've got. Tomatoes are pretty heavy feeders. You usually only need one or two big fertilizing, one in the beginning of the season, one in the mid and end of the season. Very true too about different, your melons and your gourds and things like that. Your beans, your peas, your radishes, they can use just one kind of feeding as you plant, or if you want to do water soluble, because that's easier for you, right? There's no right or wrong answer necessarily. Again, just making sure it has that nutrient profile in there. You can be watering every time you water as well with a reduced concentration.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. Well, we're getting some great comments. So definitely some reminiscing. I think a few people have said it, but Katie says the oldest joke on the Garden Path Radio show, Matt, can I rake my lawn now? Fly in the future, but do not go on any submarines. Thank you, Katie. We will definitely. So that's a good one. And then who just Howard said that his Joanne, my favorite story from our Garden Path show was my cardboard street curb project.
Oh
So yeah, so thank you. That was a good one. Yeah, so there's lots of great memories, everybody here. Um, Sue, you said you wanted to hear us talk about shows over the past few years, which we did last week as well, which ones were our favorites. So if you missed it, it is available on our websites or on the podcast. We did a good reminiscing. Bob, who's been a loyal listener, blessings to us here and wishing you good luck in the future. And Bob is an avid listener from Burlington, Ontario. Um, so yeah, so I think, and Helen just sent in a lovely photo, Matt. Did you see it?
no,
Um,
I'm scrolling through all the many listeners
yeah,
trying to
I
find the
know.
ones you're
Hello to
talking
my
about.
favorite gardeners, Joanne and Matt. Since I cannot give you a big hug or kisses, take it from me, a senior citizen from Toronto who loved, I gotta click, who loved listening to your radio show every Monday evening for years. You were so good to me and my poor green thumb. I learned so much listening to you with my cup of tea and biscuit. Thank you. So here's my reward to you from listening to you from my garden. And this beautiful picture of roses and peonies. So yeah, so
Oh,
thank you, Helen. That is lovely, and it's just so nice to see all these familiar names in our mailbox. So thank you, everybody.
yes, thank you so much. Yes, and a beautiful photo of your plants there, of your beautiful flowers. We're
Hmm.
glad we could
Love
help
the
you grow
colors.
those.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful colors.
Yes,
Very nice.
yes. But Darlene, you say no more,
Oh,
no more help. We can still help you. We're still here. We're still like we said, in our Facebook group. For check out our websites and for our upcoming. There'll be shorter little podcasts and stuff that Matt and I are going to do. Um, but we're still around, so we're not letting you go.
No, yes, exactly. We'll be on at Down the Garden Path podcast on Facebook, and we'll be posting, things that are happening in our gardens and other
Mhm.
issues and like pollinators and other timely tips and tricks as we go through. And we'll be having lots of flashback episodes posted. And so yeah, definitely follow along. We're not gone from the world. There's still other ways to reach it out to us. We hope that you'll reach out to us there. We understand that maybe that's not the way that you tune in or listen or you interact with the internet because everybody does it differently.
Right. Right.
Everybody does it a little differently.
Mhm. Mhm.
So many listener
I know.
like comments here. um, just looking here, Robert has sent something in. Uh, picture. Oh, whoops, I'm loading. Sorry, Robert. Hi, Matt and Joanne. My gift to you for all the times that you helped me. Thank you. And he sent us. Oh, how to identify your plants with your phone? Identify plants. Oh yeah, with the app thing there.
Picture this app, yeah.
That's right. Yes. And you know what? That's so funny, Robert, because I think I've told this story before. I actually was using this app and I had a design client and I designed their back or their front yard. And she had already designed in the backyard. And they invited me to a dinner because I know this person through a friend of a friend. And so I was there and I had another one of their design clients who came there who was a friend across the street. And they said, "Oh, Matt, look, we didn't even have to hire you to do our design. Look, this cool look app." And look, and he took a photo of like the nearest hydrangea, and it gave him the wrong hydrangea. So I was like, oh yes, of course. So yeah, they take you so far, but they are good. There are some good apps for some
Yeah.
crazy different plants out there that, yeah,
Yeah.
weeds
Yeah.
and very sparse natives or invasive stuff,
Mhm.
which is good to
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
I like that one that you sent in there, Robert, for sure. It's a
Mhm.
funny American
And
plant.
I use Google Lens. So just Google Lens
Mm,
on your phone. It's a free one. And yeah, I mean, if you're walking in the forest, if you see leaves and you don't know what tree it is, or you see mushrooms and is it poisonous, like you still don't eat it regardless of what the app says. But
yeah.
the apps, and we never did do a show on apps. I think we talked about that.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
all the things we've talked about. And 9 years we still ran it. We still didn't talk about everything. So yeah.
yeah, we
Oh my
talked about
goodness.
the one Growbot, seed to spoon.
Right,
Yep,
that's
with the
right.
spoon more, so you can definitely check out that one. That one's a great
Mhm.
little app to help you
Yeah.
program things. It's the kind of the first app that's integrating AI and getting
Yes.
smarter with your gardening. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
maybe Joanne, that's something that we need to do. Is maybe our listeners would like a Down the Garden Path podcast app, and they can listen to episodes, and we can have like a forum or something on there.
Ah, interesting.
Joanne's giving me the look like, yeah, okay,
Ma
you get on that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly, you get on that.
That's you. Uh,
Oh my goodness, yes. So yeah, so thank you everybody. I know we still have some time. If there are any, I think we covered everything about the garden, right? If you didn't catch it, that Matt is going to be on Global News. Reach out to us, but they only want one of us, which is fine.
well, they
Um,
want both of us, but their studio can accommodate only one of us
Right,
because of the
right,
size.
right. So we are meeting tomorrow and shooting some video at my garden. So yeah, so you'll see some clips of my garden and some stuff that Matt and I are going to do. Hopefully, they approve it and everything is good. But so yeah, so it's kind of like this kind of thanks to shout out to Helen Battersby with the Toronto Garden Journal, right?
Hmm.
And she's been a guest on her show talking about shade gardening as well. So yeah. So thank you,
That's right.
Helen.
That's right. And we had our sister Sarah on talking about the journal, which
Mhm.
is amazing as well. So yeah, thank you again, Helen, for that opportunity. And again, follow the Down the Garden Path podcast Facebook page because I'm sure we'll get the clip from uh, Global News, and we'll be able to post it and share that little segment with everybody on YouTube and our Facebook page. So take a look there. Like you said, we're going to see some of your garden, and it'll be lots of fun.
Mhm.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, I can think of one other thing. We kind of joked about this when we were writing the book about how many times we mentioned in the book to take a picture of your garden. So if there's anything I can say, right? We kind of joked about it. And
Yes.
Janet, who also so Janet does our social media. Janet also edited our book. Janet has been amazing for us. And she found these amazing little graphics that she's dripped all over the, all over the book, and dripped is not the right word. What is the word? I don't know, plugged in all over the book.
Scattered.
But we do
Sprinkled.
scattered. That's the word, not dripped. Scattered. Woo! All right. We do really strongly advise you to do that. Like,
Yeah.
especially now that you don't have to get a camera and you can just use your phone. But you will see things in those pictures or on your phone that you're not seeing in your eye. You will see where there's a gap, where there's holes, where where a plant might not. You might want more of that plant because sometimes you might love a plant. Like I think of catmint or salvia, and you like, wow, that looks really good, but it's just you can barely see it. Well, then go get a second one and plant it beside it and kind of fill out that area, or plant it in a different area and you've got repetition in your garden. So I think watching through the pictures, even if you just took it once every Saturday morning, you took some pictures, you'll really see, oh, these 2 weeks in July, the first 2 weeks of July, nothing's blooming because it is very easy. We could all with very little experience have a beautiful June garden because like 80% of the plants bloom in June, right? Or look good in June. But it's how you get it, looking good from in July and August and September and in May, right? So I think that is I guess we should leave with our parting favorite things. But my tip would be that is to because you
Yes.
forget last year, what did it look like? Did that grow that way? So I really feel that especially with the phones and our technology and the apps, if you're not sure what something is, if you've inherited a garden, you can take a photo of it and also, identify it and learn more about it on the app. So definitely my parting words would be to weekly take pictures of your garden. And even in the winter, what's showing, can you see anything? Is there any winter interest? Do you have red stems poking out of the snow? Do you have some beautiful evergreens covered looking beautiful and graceful in the snow? So, yeah. So there you go, Matt. I put you on the spot for thinking of your
Well,
favorite.
let me start by, echoing what you said, because yes, that's so great. Because when I everybody knows I teach at
Durham
community college
College.
here. That's right. And that's actually the garden journal is the project that I give my annual and perennial students. And that's what they have to do is take a picture every single week. And we look at all these different aspects of gardening, deadheading and mulching and preparing for winter and all that sort of stuff. And they really love it because you get to see from, week one in school to winter what happens. So yeah, there's that. And again, that's what that Toronto Gardeners Journal is just wonderful for. Day by day, lots of resources. You know
Hmm.
what? I'm going to end. This will be my I guess my farewell. My tip is I just hope that you all just love gardening. Garden with your heart. As I say, my natural affinity saying is, every garden is a work of heart. And you know what? It's all about what you love, what your natural affinity is, and just enjoy what you're doing and plant what you love. And you know what? There's lots of tips and tricks that we have out there that can help you. Our book, everything. We're going to be here, but just enjoy yourself. If you're not gardening and enjoying yourself and killing a couple plants along the way,
Hmm.
um, yeah,
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for being such loyal listeners, and we really appreciate it. And thank you very much for joining us down the garden path.